Mr. Kovacs, thank you for speaking to us here on Euronews. You wrote a blog post about the protests across the weekend and the last few days. Can you tell me why you decided to write that?
Well, I do that on a regular basis. Every week you can see 2, 3, even 4 pieces of the actualities and the ongoing political and public life of the country. We always maintain that the proper perspective, and that is not fake news but reality, how things in reality look, is always important. And obviously the government's perspective is also an imperative.
And just in terms of, you've had 5 key takeaways from the government perspective about these protests. What is the main message you wanted to get across?
But probably the main message is that you have to be very careful when you see the portrayal, the representation, the presentation of what was and is happening in Hungary for the past couple of days from the perspective of Western media. It's all too easy that, like coming from a jacket box, media pops up at the height of protests or demonstrations and try to portray it as it is a major public-supported event, not talking about or disregarding the fact that everything you've seen for the past 5 days, week, is basically a political action organized by a fragmented and weak political opposition, which is unsuccessful in parliament because of the very few seats they were able to earn. And obviously they are preparing for the upcoming European parliamentary election.
Can I just ask you then about the opposition voice in the country? We saw videos of opposition politicians being sort of dragged away from a television station. They say the only chance of having a fair voice in the country is to try and read out these kind of petitions on air. Do you think the opposition has a fair voice in your country?
Yes, the opposition has the fair voice and the fair media support in the country, according to all major polls and available statistics. The fact is that they obviously are frustrated. The name and cause of the frustration is that the Hungarian people very clearly has given a mandate to the Fidesz Christian Democratic Party Union back in April. That is a 2/3 constitutional majority in the country, the 3rd time in 8 years. That's a clear-cut indication about the political climate, the political support my political community has in face of the almost non-existent political support for opposition parties. And very obviously, again, as we speak, we are approaching a political campaign in which they are trying to find alternative ways of expressing themselves and coming to light, and also enjoying some kind of public attention that wouldn't be there if it's about their real programs. If you mention political figures, opposition politicians being dragged away from public institutions, there's a reason for that. They breached the law. And I think that is a threshold, that's a red line that shouldn't be passed. It happened back last week in Parliament. There was a huge political campaign in the Parliament building, basically making or shaming the Parliament itself, and very obviously the political opposition. And that's what you see on the streets. As we proceed with time and as we see the approaches and speeches on behalf of opposition figures, it's obvious that it's not because of the labor code and not because of public and administrative force that this protest is going on.
Mr. Kovacs, just in terms of the political voices that do exist in the country, what are the alternative voices that you might see on state television?
Yeah, well, state television, to the best of my knowledge, but let me state that media affairs do not belong to the government. It's been established as an independent body back in 2010 that is working under the auspices and the supervision of Parliament, if it's about the public television and the public broadcasting. And the public broadcasting agency is following the so-called BBC rules. So all political parties, according to and in measure with their political support and weight in Parliament, are being provided the opportunity to talk to the people. And obviously, the political opposition has its own alternative possibilities for publicity and advertising their political views, not only in the leftist liberal media, but also in social media and other occasions. So if you take a proper look and a statistical look at the Hungarian media landscape, I would rather suggest that there is an overwhelming opposition media and opinion weight against the government, especially and very critical for the past 8 years.
Mr. Kovacs, we're seeing figures from the Reuters news agency that says 15,000 people took part in these demonstrations, 5 consecutive days. Were you expecting this level of opposition to this new law?
Well, with all due respect to Reuters, counting probably is not the biggest advantage they have or the biggest strength they have. They might be, certainly they are better in trying to provide reliable news. The numbers have never reached 15,000 for the past couple of years, certainly not in consecutive days. A couple of hundreds, maybe a couple of thousands of people have been protesting, depending on the occasion. And again, we shouldn't mix that up with any kind of popular uprising or popular protest against what is happening in this country. This is organized by the political opposition. We see political activists, well-identified political activists who've been running small and sometimes violent political protests against the government for the past 8 years. We see all those faces, all those figures and names popping up all of a sudden at the end of the political season here in Hungary.
Mr. Kovacs, very quickly, you're saying that counting isn't Reuters' strength, but their strength is providing reliable news. Given that they don't actually seem to have anything to gain here, surely by your own admission, what they are doing is providing reliable news. And so they say 15,000 people were on the streets. I'm just going back to my question. Do you think you were expecting that level of opposition?
I wish it was true what you are suggesting, that they are providing
very quickly, I mean, but by your own admission, you've acknowledged that the Reuters news agency is a reliable source of news. They have put forward this figure. They themselves don't have a Hungarian base.
They should be. We talk to them on a daily and regular basis. But the thing is that we've seen the outburst of media anger, let's put it that way, yesterday and the day before, coming from international media, which is trying to portray what is happening here in Hungary from a completely isolated and tendentious perspective. And that is trying to enlarge and put more emphasis what is happening from a political perspective, portraying what is happening as a major issue in face of the facts, which is that these are small groups of opposition parties and opposition activists which are trying to pose as a major uprising here in Hungary.
So I suppose then my question to you is, if you dispute the Reuters picture and other pictures, what is happening in Hungary from your perspective?
What is happening in Hungary is, as it is decided by the Hungarian people at 3 consecutive elections, again by constitutional majorities. The country has reshaped itself for its better for the past 8 years. We have inherited from, as a matter of fact, from the liberal leftist parties, a country at the brink of economic collapse and social upheaval. We have consolidated not only the social structures of the country, but we have effectuated a fundamental change in the economy. There was robust growth during the past 3 quarters of this year, about 5%. The Hungarian economy is doing ever better. Double-digit increase of real income for the past 3 years, which is indicating that all Hungarians who have jobs and more, and record heights of employment are the results of this refurbishment. Are not simply getting jobs, but earning more year by year. So if you ask us, and from the Hungarian government's perspective, Hungary is doing very well indeed. And we look forward actually to the parliamentary elections because we have a lot to dispute and talk about at the European level. But it's certainly not the labour code, but migration and all other major European issues that have been addressed by your channel.
If I could just, Mr. Kovacs, just going back to then your portrayal of these crowds of people, the numbers, who they are. What do you say to the claim that what you are doing is effectively delegitimizing elements of ordinary Hungary, who are concerned with changes in this law? Surely you're not suggesting everybody there is simply a pawn in someone else's international game.
Again, what I'm suggesting here, the figures, the actors, the opposition politicians you see on the screens, who've been trying to make a huge scandal in the Hungarian public television and the Hungarian parliament earlier, are basically running a political campaign against the government. We truly believe, and that's the effect, and that's the result of discussions to the labor unions and other social organizations, and having a proper understanding of the Hungarian labor market, that the measures we have introduced by amending the labor code are beneficial for employees and for the Hungarian economy. And also, if it's about the administrative courts, there are the international and European benchmarks for administrative courts running in a country, even under the auspices of the Minister for Justice. So nothing unusual is happening in Hungary, not because I'm a government spokesman and I'm telling you, but because if you take a look at the facts and not fake news, that's the case.
So if I just go back to your blog post, you share an image in there which you use to say shows the size of these crowds. It shows what you say is a smaller crowd on the streets than at a local concert. Could you tell me when exactly that image was taken? We were just trying to verify it with other sources, and where exactly it's taken from.
I think it was provided by one of the opposition journals or websites, as a matter of fact, 2 or 3 days ago. But again, instead of talking about the figures, which again, from the portrayal of the Western European liberal media, seems to be staggeringly big, the real numbers on the streets are very fortunately not that high. Again, I'm suggesting here that this is an organized political action in which the efforts of Soros-run organizations, you see these organizations raising their voice against alleged legal abruptions of or protocols. It's very visible. We see those political activists who've been active, financed by Mr. Soros for the past couple of years, being among the crowd and among the perpetrators of the violent attacks against police. And also, I got to tell you that everything you see on behalf of police is a response. So it's not initiated by police, but that's a response to a violent mob that's been attacking police.
Mr. Kovacs, you mentioned there George Soros, and that vast elements of these crowds were there because of the influence of George Soros. Could I ask you, upon what basis you're making that claim and you've reached that conclusion?
Upon the basis of solid fact.
OK, when you say solid fact, forgive my ignorance, from the outside, what might those facts be?
Those facts are including the many personalities, individuals, political activists and organizations who all belong to the network, the framework Mr. Soros and like-minded people are running, claiming political influence, undue political influence without a political mandate. Increasingly, especially for the past 3 years, since the outburst of the migration crisis and illegal migration is a major problem, Mr. Soros is vindicating, and his organizations are vindicating, a major role in political decision-making procedures. That mandate is not there. They've never been elected. They never went through democratic elections. And it's especially disturbing when you see these organizations and individuals taking a political role, again, without any kind of democratic mandate.
Well, just speaking to you now, it seems that, very much the message you want to convey is that you're on the side of the facts, that the Hungarian government is trying to show the outside world what's really going on. And just from my perspective then, wanting to talk to you and understand exactly how you have so accurately characterised who is in those crowds, could you just tell me a bit more about how you know who exactly is there, as opposed to maybe suggesting and repeating political lines?
It's very simple. You see the pictures. You can obviously, if you have the capability to see, you see those figures, you identify them from previous occasions. In the world of politics, everybody knows about the other actors, everything. So it's no secret. It's just the open facts on the streets you can see.
So mass surveillance of members of the crowd is how you reach that conclusion. Mr. Kovacs, let me just...
Hang on for a second. Yeah. You have to hang on for a second. I mean, if you follow the events of the past couple of days, you could see that it was themselves, by social media, that they were making surveillance of what was happening. So there's no need for any kind of secret or state surveillance of the public protest. It's all broadcasted live by many news outlets and by the participators, the perpetrators themselves.
Just very quickly, my last question to you, Mr. Kovacs, and thank you for your time, is ordinary Hungarians who might have legitimate concerns and say, we do not have a voice that might be taking part in these protests? Do you think your blog post, the tone you have maybe taken there, shuts those people out and delegitimizes their concerns?
Not at all, because it is targeted at those who are the perpetrators of the political actions of the past couple of days.
Mr. Kovacs, joining us there from Hungary. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.